but you
We've only
got me
got
this year.
one more year of this where we have to worry about top four. I mean, as we all know, the records reflect that all the way back to 05, other than the Fickle year, Ohio State's in the top 12 every year since 05. What is that, 16 seasons or whatever, other than the Fickle year in the probation year where they were 12-0, they're in the playoff every year. So, it's going to be like Duke in the NCAA tournament. I mean, you have to have a federal investigation if you don't make it. So
what I found amusing but also disturbing about Nick Saban's little parade tour there was that his number one card that he's throwing down on the table are Vegas point spreads. And I'm thinking, really, you're Nick Saban. So you're telling me that if I stand up in a news conference and I ask you a question or I present to you why playoff teams should be deserving, and I'm going to make my first point or any point to be Vegas point spreads, Nick Saban wouldn't shoot that person down and say, what does Vegas have to do with football? Really?
Well, I really don't believe Nick Saban believed what Nick Saban had to say during his media tour. I think it was an expectation. You got to keep the fanatics happy by going out there and stumping for your team. But there was no energy in his statements. There was no real anything in his words. And yeah, it was a lot of empty words about point spreads and, well, we've only lost by X amount of points. Well, you've lost twice. And honestly, you probably should have lost 4 times. You should have lost to Texas. You should have lost to A&M. So, we're playing really good. We're playing really well right now, which is obviously a shot at Ohio State. I mean, a lot of people were trying to make it Alabama versus TCU or whatever. No, it was absolutely Nick Saban saying it was Alabama versus Ohio State. And that Ohio State, in a game that it lost by 22 points, that it was losing by 8 points with about 7 minutes to go. And I'm not win denying and saying that, Ohio State didn't lose the game. Ohio State lost the game in spectacular fashion. But, it was a lot of empty words. And I really don't know if Nick Saban really had a lot of piss and vinegar in his blood right there as he was trying to stump for his team.
Absolutely. Besides 2006, does anyone recall Urban Meyer? Now, answering questions at a news conference, let's say after the Big Ten championship game, is one thing. Of course, he's, coaches in those positions get asked, is your team worthy of the playoff? And I remember Urban Meyer saying, yeah, I believe we can play with anyone. You certainly expect that.
I'm going to assume he did in 2018, but like offhand, I don't recall that happening. But I mean, it's just expected at this point, and it's been expected for years. That's why you bring those coaches on, and now we're going to bring on blah 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 to rile up the people and get them angry about somebody else presenting a case.
Meyer definitely pushed it after the 2006 SEC championship. He definitely pushed his team as hard as they'd let him, And then 2017, the precedent was set. In 2017, Wisconsin was undefeated. They were the number 4 team. Ohio State had already had 2 losses and needed to play a letter perfect game, and they really didn't. They kind of screwed around, and they beat Wisconsin 27-21, but they had 3 turnovers in the game, and you just didn't get the sense that there was going to be a lot of movement for Ohio State to put them into the playoff. I think they ended up 5th, and Alabama, which was 11-1, I think probably lost to Auburn that year and didn't make the SEC championship game. They backdoored their way in, without a championship game appearance. The very same premise, the very same scenario worked in Alabama's favor just 5 years ago. Oh, how they forget. And, now it worked in Ohio State's favor. To me, and I know we can get into this through the balance of the show, it just seems to me that Georgia and Michigan are on a separate level, a separate plane, and at least that's what they've shown. And then TCU and Ohio State are kind of like, the next step down, and then there's a big chasm to me, or a chasm of some degree after those 4. So I think there's a top 2, a next 2, and then everybody else after that. But I think the top 2 are pretty much on a level by themselves, and it's going to take quite an effort by either the underdogs in the semifinals to pull off a win, in my opinion.
Although if we use Nick Saban's logic and where he goes for his information, the top two is Ohio State and Georgia because they're favored by more than the other teams. They're favored by and they'd be favored over Michigan. They'd be favored by over TCU by more than Michigan is. So, but that's, there's no way to know who's better between Ohio State and Michigan. So we'll have to wait until maybe the championship game to know that.
Boy, oh boy, wouldn't that blow everybody's mind?
I wonder what we would have to do, like 4 weeks if this was Ohio State, Michigan in the semifinals, what 4 weeks of dealing with that would have been like, because 1 week was exhausting and it's my favorite thing all year long. But to have like 4 weeks of Ohio State, Michigan hype, I think you need to contain it to a week or 9 days or whatever the championship game would be, because I don't think the world or our sphere can handle 4 weeks of that.
No, it'd be like in modern storytelling in movies, or especially in TV, and having an A plot line and a B plot line. You'd have to break it into some smaller plot lines or whatever because people would be exhausted. I mean, and I'm not talking just people having to write about it or talk about it. I think everybody would be physically exhausted going through not only the holiday season, but 4 weeks of build up to that game. And, we're really putting the cart before the horse. I know that a lot of Georgia fans and just Ohio State haters have found their way into all of the streams at this point. So I'm not making a prediction at this point of Ohio State will be playing January 9th. So calm down or whatever. But if we get a week of it, it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. Red Bull, I'm here to be sponsored. I will drink your product exclusively.
And I'm seeing people in the comments thinking I was serious when I said there's no way to know who is better between Ohio State and Michigan. I saw the game. Don't worry. We know what happened there.